Greetings, everyone. My name is Gerasimek, as she's said prior to, and we're going to be looking at alternative film developer. This picture in the background here is actually one that we developed in the film lab, and so let's get to it. We have to start this presentation with acknowledgement of the past. Ansel Adams, you do not take a photograph, you make it. And he was one of the best, if not the best, black and white film photographers of all time, and he's going to be with us in spirit during this presentation. So a little overview, what we're going to be talking about. What is the film development? What is the life cycle? All of the things that you would expect in one of these presentations. Let's get to it. So what is the film development process? Some of you know and some of you don't know. So I'm going to try to break it down in layman's terms to make this easily to follow. So I call it the negative life cycle. So what you start, you get a roll of film from whatever, you load it into the camera, you take your pictures, have a good time, and then in complete darkness, after you've rolled it back together and you get it back into the canister, you'll put it in a completely dark room if you're doing this yourself like we did. You will load that into a spool. You'll load it, you pop it open in the dark, put it in the spool, put it into a light-sensitive drum container, and then that you can now flip on the lights. So then after you do that, you pre-wash the film for about 2 minutes or so. Then you take your developer, and this is the part of that we were messing with, this development process, because that film has these wonderful, cool things called silver halide crystals. And when you take that picture, when the light hits it, there's a little latent image. Through the development process, it gets developed, it comes alive in a sense. And so the development process is very important because if you overdevelop it, all of the light that's been hitting those frames, it'll become completely black. So the development process timing is very important. After that, you will dump that out. You put in what we call a stop back because it's literally stopping development process. We used water. You can use literally any stop bath, but because we're cheap and also economically and economically friendly, we used water. So you'll do that for about 2 minutes, and then you will dump it out. And then the real nasty stuff, as Professor Worm always said, is the fixer. And what the fixer does is it makes it not light sensitive anymore. Think of it like a lacquer. It makes it permanent. You do that for about 5 minutes, you dump it out, and then it goes into this really cool drum thing. When you can now open it up, it's okay with the light. You now put it into this container, and it bubbles water through it. I call it the bubble bath because that's literally basically what it is. For about 10 minutes, and then you can take it off the spool and hang it up to dry, and that can range anything from a day, or when I did it at home, I don't know, 20 minutes, an hour. So that is the development process for the film. That same process, you basically do it on the enlarger. So you take that out, you cut it up, you find the frames that you want, and you put it into a little sheet. Then you'll pick out, I like that one, and you'll put it into the enlarger. It's like a reverse camera or projector. So it'll project that negative onto a piece of paper, right? The negative paper, and that shines the light on it, kind of like what we did in the camera. And then you develop, again, the development process, the stop, the fix, the bath, you rinse it, you look at it and say, did this turn out okay? If so, you keep it, you go back into the fix to make it archival quality, and that's what we did. So this is the process. So you develop the prints, and then you start the photo all over again. So, alternative film and print developers. Why coffee and yerba mate? So, there are 3 main ingredients that go into a film developer that we found, that somebody found about 30 years ago. Someone was doing this research. You have caffeinic acid, sodium carbonate, and ascorbic acid. But we all know these wonderful fancy terms as instant coffee or yerba mate, washing soda, and then just plain old vitamin C. So what we were playing with is alternatives to the caffeinic acid. Here are our methods. And in the background, that's Ansel Adams doing what he does. So the process. This is kind of how it came to be. The methods is what I have described. So Professor Yerba at the beginning of the semester said, hey, let's rock and roll, let's try something different, and I was for it. We shot Ilford HP5 Plus film, basically the old time except once, and I'll say that. So it's implied if I say film, it's Ilford's HP5 Plus, which is known to be able to develop in alternative methods the best. When we put the prints, after we develop, we put it into prints, and the developer is usually clear, but it was very, very dark because we all drink coffee. It was dark as coffee. So when you're developing it, it was hard to see the development of that print. So I wanted to find something that was lighter, so I went to the internet and found caffeinic acid on Wikipedia, and I saw that yerba mate had a higher caffeinic acid per 100 meters. It was more potent. I was like, this might be, I found it. I found something alternative. So here are the variables. There are so many variables. I wrote 5 pages of notes of variables, but here are the variables. So how many teaspoons of caffeinic acid? The type of caffeinic acid, as you will see for the results, was very important. The type of film and the light-sensitive paper. So if it was matte, or if it was resin-coated, or if it was old, it was new, that was a variable we had to consider. The time of development in the print was in the caffeinic acid. So was it 9 minutes in the drum? Was it 7 minutes? Those are very important. Like I said, if you overdevelop, it becomes black. And then time spent under the enlarger. Because the concept of more light is hitting something, it'll become darker. So the longer the enlarger time, the darker the print. So that is something we have to consider. Here are the results. We're going to start with the very beginning, caffeinol. So the very, very first film, unfortunately, because it was so bad, I didn't keep it. But this is the same results, the second roll of film. So it was 2 minutes in the pre-wash, 10 minutes to develop it, because usually if you're doing it with a normal developer, it's 10 minutes. So we tried that, and as you can see, that's all we had. Also, unfortunately, the other half of the roll that me and Professor Yerba shot was black. It was completely black. So both times we figured out that it was probably something wrong in the stock. It wasn't anything to do with us. Both batches came out very poorly. Here are the prints. It works. It's alive, is what I always would say in the darkroom, right? The first print was quite light, so we added more and larger time. And I want to make a note that will carry through the rest of this presentation, the difference between cold light and for the enlarger and hot light. The cold light uses fluorescent lighting, so it's cooler. It comes like a little more soft. It's maybe not as much contrast, but it's like the gold standard. The hot light is an incandescent bulb. So that does, in some ways, is another variable that we have to consider. So that's what we used. Yerbanol, right? I came up with the term because nobody online is using yerba mate to develop stuff. So I'm the first. Yerbanol film, how did it work? It didn't. So the one time that Professor Yerba wanted to try something different, which is always wonderful, we used 5 and below film. Don't. It did not work. Who knows if we would have done it the proper way, it might have worked, but it was not very good. So we tried an HP5 because it's tried and true. I personally think we didn't develop it long enough, but there were so many variables we will never know. But here are the photograms. So these are the photograms, and the way photograms work, the way I've described it, right? You have the negative and the enlarger. All you do is you go on your computer, you take your image, you make it in negative format, and you print it out, and you put that from here to here onto it, right? So they're touching, right? And then you shine the enlarger light. Same process. And this is what we came out with the Yerbanol. So obviously we know yerba mate works. Unfortunately, the one on the left, we threw out the bad prints, so this is all we have left. But the cool thing is, when we found all of the perfect timings, we put it at the second one, and that's the one and only print. So that was pretty cool. Then we tried it on a different day. This picture I took in 2022 when I was in the Marine Corps. And the first one was quite light, so we're like, let's try, we wanted the darker darks and lighter lights, and the contrast filter affects the light shining onto the paper. So it insert science here. Off the top of my head, I can't remember, but we used a contrast filter that makes it more contrasty. And as you can see, it turned out pretty okay, but we were like, let's try to perfect it. And then we overcorrected and got too light, and then we overcorrected again and made it too dark. And then we said, well, that's enough of that, and we went home for the day. Brewed yerba mate prints. So prior to this, we had used instant yerba mate and instant coffee. I wanted to see from the lovely Chris Fireball, he gave me raw yerba mate. And this picture, as you see here, is how it's traditionally drank in Brazil. What's this have to do with anything? This is my great-grandpa. In the negatives that you're about to see, I was trying to emulate this picture. I want to make it abundantly clear. When you're looking at these pictures, this is what you should be looking for. As you can see why I put that prior slide. It came out super, super, super dark, super dark. And so I was like, well, maybe it's the enlarger time. Actually, that first brood should be like the third one because all the test prints were even darker than what you see on the left. Yes. And the more I used it, the lighter it got. So it was very unstable. And so I did less enlarger time, less development time, and it got a little lighter. And then I said, what is it really to developer? So I isolated that variable, made a new batch with instant yerba mate. Oh, sorry. And we got this. So I knew it was the brood it was too strong in a sense. And the one on the left, it just did whatever it wanted. I think it was an expired paper, but I thought it was a really cool image, so I wanted to include it, how unvariable things can happen. So the most recent is I wanted to see with new paper, because again, I think it was the paper that was kind of a little bit. So I got brand new paper from Amazon. It was very, very expensive. For a 100 pack was $50. Normally, it runs $158 on Amazon. So prints are very valuable. Again, this is my grandpa. This is not the exact image because I was using a negative of my family negatives, and so this is what we're looking for in these prints. Yeah, the one on the left is Yerbanol. The one, you can barely see it. Yeah, you really can't see it. The one on the left is Caffeinol. I did 30 seconds on the enlarger, 2 minutes on development, 2 minutes in the stopbacks, 4 minutes fix, and about 30 seconds for the rinse. Usually, again, you would do the process again. The spots that you will see are because I decided that it wasn't worth trying to fix it forever. And I thought, well, is there something wrong? This should have worked. You've seen it. It should work. The only difference was the paper, right? So on the left, you see spots because, again, the chemicals sit. That's why we rinse things. And this is the hot enlarger because I was using, instead of 35 millimeter, I was using 120 film. So it was a bigger format. I didn't have the larger carrier. I couldn't remember if I had the right side of the paper up. And so that's why you see two. Either way, it still didn't work. I got frustrated and saying, maybe it's the enlarger. And I'm done with Caffeinol. And so, again, Grandpa Herschel coming back. Yeah, I think it's the paper. Right? Even the enlarger changes. I went from 45 seconds to 55 seconds. With a contrast filter, nothing is helping. And I said, well, what if we just mixed both of them? It was the end of the lab. I had places to be, and it still kind of worked, I think, because of the Yerbanol. So, the moment you've all been waiting for, the success that came with Caffeinol. Ta-da! If I could have music of like triumph, here we go. The lovely Ricky in the back was our subject matter, and we haven't made prints of this. So we're up to where we've done recently in the semester. I took it home, made my own dark room. Who knows any of the variables that made this? The only thing I changed was how long it was. It was about 7 minutes on the development time with a little bit more constant temperatures because the dark room is very hot. And so this is the presentation. We've went through the film life cycle, all the research, all the variables, and the unfortunate part of all of this is after this semester, after Professor Yerba leaves us and goes to do bigger and better things, what I just learned will go away. And that is the most tragic about this, because this isn't just art, this is science, this is life, this is humanity. And I want to also say that this is my works cited. Most of it was just film credits, because as you can see, this was an inadvertent research project. And a big thanks to Professor Yerba, Sam Gillespie to help with the chemistry, Chris Fireball, Ricky Ankin, Robert Trevino, all of the Brenner Library folks, and all of the faculty and staff who supported this.